Good morning. Our hand today is going to be pocket nines. We've got an interesting hand here. We've got a limper and then a min raise before it gets back to me. So let's start with some of the min raises. Unfortunately, I don't have many hands on any of these players. 7 hands, 8 hands, 8 hands for the big blind. So it's going to be tough to really build ranges. This is a 25 NL game. That might have some adjustment to our ranges. So I have been seeing lately a lot of these min raises, and I think that kind of follows from tournament play. Not really sure why people like to do these min raises. It just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't seem correct for me. So what we're going to do is start with Villain 2. He just limped. So I think for Villain 2's limped, I'm going to give him a pretty wide range. He's already played 43 hands, so almost half the hands that he's been at the table. So I'm just going to say he's got a lot of hands here. 38% minus these premium hands that I assume would have raised. The min raise, we could give him some of the premium hands if we think he is somebody who makes plays like this, or the min raise is going to be something speculative. He knows he shouldn't just limp behind, so he kind of min raises to avoid that dreaded, limping stat. So I kind of think maybe pocket pairs, the Jackson lowers, some of the broadways, some of the suited aces, just min raising again a little bit tighter. He's playing 25-13. He is in early position, and there is a limper, so I assume he would have raised bigger with queens plus ace queen, possibly even jacks plus ace queen, just to try to isolate. But who knows? So then it's my turn. So I'm in the small blind. I'm versus an early position player. Small blind versus EP. So 3-bet range looks something like that. 3-bet or call range looks something like that from the small blind. I do think this could be a 3-bet range here versus that small 2-bet. I think we can 3-bet and then lead most of the flops. If the flop does not have an ace, I think we're probably going to be good because I would expect him to be calling with a lot of aces in his hand. But like a king high flop, queen high flop, I think we could bet, like we'd c-bet and expect to pick up the pot a large percentage of time, and we would do that, for protection. And the kings queens hits our range. On a low flop, let's say 8 high, I still think we bet. I think in that case, we're betting a little bit for value because Villain 3 might not believe us. He calls the flop c-bet, and then assuming we have a low card for the turn, we could bet again for value, and he might call again, or he might just give up. We're trying to maximize our value with nines, while at the same time not giving a free card and letting him draw out and hit his one pair hand that beats us. So I think we do have possibility of raising. Since this is early at a table, I just went ahead and called out of position to see what's going to happen. And then Villain 1 calls from the big blind. I'm just going to say he's got, this is 41%. It could be 100% of hands minus these hands up in the corner that I would have assumed 3-bet. And then Villain 1, the limping villain calls again, and I think whatever he limped with here is probably going to call, especially with 3 other players now in the pot. So we see a flop of jack queen 9. This is not my favorite type of board, especially with pocket nines. We hit trips. 10-8 gets there. However, when we think about it, there's a lot of hands that are going to call a bet. So I don't like leading out. Villain 3 has the initiative, but I think there's a possibility Villain 3 bets. We can check raise here, especially with trips, and expect to get called by a lot of hands that are out there. Yeah, there's turn cards that we could just not be happy about. So I think any 8, 10, king, ace, Probably not the ace. I mean, if you've got king 10, you already have it. 8, 10, king, and then I think a queen and a jack are all going to be pretty bad for me. Which, I mean, if we add it up, what do we have? So we look here. You're looking at 3 queens, 3 jacks. That's 6. 4 kings. That's 10. 4 tens. That's 14, and 4 eights. That's 18. So 18 cards out of the deck. There's going to be quite a few cards that'll come that we don't like. But at the same time, if we check raise here, I think we're going to get. We could get called by solid range. So I think checking here is the appropriate play. We're going to be checking, I think, 100% of our range. And I think our check raise should be probably 2 pair plus. Our open ender. Ooh. Yeah, let's color code these. Our open ender. Go back to. There we go. I think it looks something like that. High percentage you check raise. Villain 1 checks. Let's see here. This guy checks. Oh, and this guy checks. So I think they're going to be checking. I don't anticipate anyone to be leading out here. I don't have any donk flop stats here, so it's hard to say. And I don't think this is really a board that we're going to see a lot of donks on. It's connected. So villain 3 bets. He bets 3/4 pot, 6 big blinds. What is he going to be doing that with? I think he's probably going to be doing that with, let's say, our c-bet stats 100%. Top pair plus, maybe middle pair. Maybe middle pair. I think open ender and probably the 2 card and the 1 card open ender is probably going to be betting. The gut shots, maybe. I think we'll leave the gut shots in. Because that includes things like ace 8, king queen, king jack, which we already have included, but like the 9-8, 8s, 8-7, which could be playing. So I think that's going to be his range. If I check raise, then I think he's probably going to be calling with, these draws. Gut shot, maybe. Gut shot is a maybe. But we're targeting them, and you can see we're going to be ahead of the top pair, middle pair, and there's going to be a lot of cards that he calls with. I think overall, that's 57.5%. You get rid of the gut shot, that's only 10%. So maybe 20%, and that might be it. That might be all that he folds. Even if you get rid of middle pair and gut shot, you drop down to 32. So he's still calling with over 50% of his hands. I think this would be a good spot to check raise here. I chose to call. So what we're going to do is kind of change this to our calling range. And really, what kind of hands call? Top pair. I think top pair calls. I think maybe the gut shot calls. Oops. Let's do this. Top pair calls. Maybe the gut shot calls. Maybe middle pair, just to see what he does after that. So we're going to get rid of those so that we don't have them in there. So something like that. I'd much prefer the check raise. Much prefer the check raise here. And then both villains folded. So on these other villains, I kind of would expect calls from these draws, open enders, maybe the gut shot. I mean, they're loose enough to play gut shot. They're loose enough to call. So we're looking at calling 60%. I think with the check raise, he's going to tighten up a little bit. I still think he's going to be calling the open enders, probably top pair plus, and middle pairs kind of up in the air. So I still think he's calling 43% of the time. That's the first guy. And then this last guy, same thing. I think top pair plus, probably the open ender for the check raise. So we're looking at, again, 40% calling. But they didn't. So we are heads up now. Ace of Hearts comes out, and as I said, I don't think I'm necessarily scared of that card, because if a player had King 10, they already had the straight. So we don't have to worry necessarily about him drawing out on us with that ace. The king, on the other hand, connects with, if for any person that has a 10, same thing with the 8. The 10 connects with anyone that has the king, especially ace king. I think this only improves our hand, and this is why I think check raise could have been so strong. We check raise, he calls, ace comes out. If he has ace queen or ace jack, he now has 2 pair. He's going to pay us off big time, as long as a scare card does not come on the turn. As long as an 8, a 10, or a king doesn't come on that on the river, he's going to pay off. So I think this check raise on a flop would have gotten us much bigger. And check raise, so he has 50. I think check raising to 18 could have been good. And then that allows us just to shove all in at this point and have him call. So I check, and I think that's going to be standard check with any of our hands that we would have had. So, oops, hold on, let's go back here. Select those, and then ace of hearts. All right, there we go. So now we could have had 2 pair, ace queen, ace jack. At this point, we check. I think we're checking everything since we checked the flop. Villain bets 15, bets kind of large again. So I think the larger size is suggesting 2 pair or a set. Top pair, maybe, if you have the ace 10, possibly. So that is the open ender. Trying to bet to get people to fold. Does he really have the open ender here? I think he could just check behind. So I think we're looking at top pair, 2 pair. A top pair if he has ace 10. So right now it's looking good. I think we are going to be way ahead of him with our trips. He was playing, he's betting 40%. Now, out of our hands, I think the only hands that we would be calling here, and this is, again, I think our play should have been to check raise the flop. So since we just check called, I think our play is to check call again with ace queen and ace jack. And then 5 of spades, and that is not a scare card. So if we had check raise the flop, we would have shoved all in, and this would have been great for us. Here we have to think, okay, we just called twice. Is villain really going to bet? No, I don't think so. I think villain's going to be checking behind here with value with his 2 pair, probably his sets. I mean, he has to be scared that we have a 10-8 or a king 10 or something like that. So, how do we get our value? Yeah, we could lead, which is what I did with ace queen, ace jack. I think that is too obvious. We're trying to get some value, and that looks at least 2 pair plus. Is really what it looks like. Maybe even just a straight. If I was this player, if I couldn't beat 2 pair plus, I think I'm just folding. I'm not calling with ace king. I'm not calling with queen 10 or jack 10 or anything like that. And even with ace queen, ace jack, I don't think you could call with ace jack. I think you call with trips plus or straight. I think that's all that you call. So I don't like my play here. Yeah, I get some value, but I think the possibility is maybe this guy decides to bluff it. Again, we only have 8 hands. I think this works out. So he shows, hold on, let's see here. So I bet and he calls. So yeah, I don't think he's calling with top pair anymore. I think it's going to be 2 pair plus, 2 pair set. And he shows ace queen 2 pair. So, I mean, we got what we wanted. We got his stack, but I don't like how we played it, because on the river, I think it was just too obvious that, hey, I can beat 2 pair. I think that's kind of what my bet is saying. I can beat 2-pair, and a thinking player is going to see this and recognize it, and it's going to fold and say, you know what, I hate folding 2-pair, but you're saying you can beat 2-pair. Check raising on the flop, on the other hand, is another story. So I check raise the flop. He calls, which I expect him to call with top pair, top kicker. And then once that turn comes on the ace, he can't get rid of it. He is going to be confident and think that he is ahead with 2-pair. And I think we would always get called by 2-pair at that point. Yes, I'm thinking players might, say, I think he got trips or I got, but because we have the straight draws in our range here, we could easily have a 10. We could easily have, let's say Jack 10 or 9-10, and make the exact same type of play. So we've protected our range enough by including those draws that it's going to entice 2-pair hands. Now, would we entice a Queen 10 and Jack 10 to call? Maybe. Would we get like a Ace King to call? I don't know if Ace King would call the check raise. If he does call the check raise, I think that player is automatically calling now. But I think Ace King probably doesn't call this all-in bet on the river. So made a mistake, missed out on the check raise. Should have really taken advantage of it. I'm not sure why I didn't, but that's why we do this. We try to learn. So this should have been a check raise. I think the outcome would have been the same. Would have taken a stack, but I think it would have been much better had we check raised the flop and then shoved on the turn. All right, hopefully you enjoy this. If you do, look tomorrow for another.